Things that will make you a witch in the Middle Ages. Let's get right into it. Number 1. If you cannot support yourself financially. Hey bro, can I borrow a 20? Yep, it was a sin to be poor during the Middle Ages. Can you imagine the percentage of people during that time that were wealthy to the extent they named the broke and poor people as witches? The poor, homeless, and those forced to rely on the community for survival and support were some of the most vulnerable and often accused of witchcraft. A very good example. Sarah Good, extremely disliked and distrusted by her neighbors because she wandered from house to house begging for food, only to be named a witch and later executed in the year 1692. Number 2. Talking too much. In current times, someone who talks too much would typically get the "damn, that's crazy" treatment, along with the dumb, spaced out look to go along with the conversation. But back in the Middle Ages, talking too much could be seen as abnormal behavior, and because the superstition was so high during the past, speaking too much or being very outspoken could get you a first-class trip to meet God. Or the devil, since you were accused of being a witch. And for you introverts, you're not off the hook either. Speaking too little or being too quiet could also have you packing your bags to go to the afterlife. Number 3. Baking exceptional bread. In times like these, pissing off Gordon Ramsay and being called an idiot sandwich may not be such a bad thing. Being a terrible cook could actually save you from witch accusations. You see, although baking bread was a common skill consumed often in households, during those times, excelling at it could raise alarms due to superstition. In such cases, one could be accused of witchcraft or some sort of sorcery simply because of how exceptionally well they cooked. Imagine giving your all in the kitchen. You're measuring properly, you're mixing the dough, and you put the bread in the oven for just the right amount of time. You give it to a group of people to share. Wow, this is actually really good. Yeah, I agree, this bread is incredible. A little too incredible. You sitting there thinking they're complimenting you, whole time they're looking at you like this. Number 4. When a woman is rich or financially independent. It was a big sin to see a grown woman living her life like Oprah, without any additional support, especially if she didn't have any man in her life. Financially independent women would have likely been isolated from the community until, of course, arrested and put on trial. Between 1620 and 1725 in colonial New England, particularly during the notorious Salem witch trials of 1692, women without brothers or sons to share their inheritance found themselves vulnerable to accusations of witchcraft. Number 5. Having too much fun.
Let's get you having fun.
Yep, in the context of the Middle Ages, having too much fun or displaying exuberance and joy could indeed contribute to suspicions of witchcraft. The prevailing beliefs of that time often associated pleasure and enjoyment with sinful or supernatural activities. Individuals who were perceived as excessively joyous, whether through laughter, celebrations, or unconventional behavior, might be considered as possibly engaged in dealings with the devil. The notion was that witches, in their pursuit of pleasure, were acting against the moral and societal norms of the time. Number 6. When you are very old. You see, it was bad. Like, very bad to be an old woman during the Middle Ages. Older women, both married and unmarried, were considered as witches and thus were more susceptible to most executions. You made it through this tough life at a very well old age, only to have it ended by getting accused. If I can remember very well, the case of Rebecca Nurse was actually one of the saddest. Can you imagine that she was only in her early 70s when she was tried, convicted, and put to death for being a witch? Number 7. If she stops going to church. When a woman suddenly stops going to church for no reason, then that means she is a witch, as believed by people during the medieval ages. In most instances, such women usually might try to offer an excuse, such as being dressed only in rags, or just maybe she's too busy romancing her former self, that she forgets all that has to do with the church. People during those days often believed that if she was not going to church, then it could be because she was too tired from attending witches' Sabbaths and drinking red wine in the rye fields behind her minister's house. Number 8. If a woman threatened you and then it totally came true. Has a woman ever threatened you like, "Yo ass is on fire," and you're there not given an F, and then you go to eat some Taco Bell, and the next thing you know, your ass is actually on fire? Well, I have news for you. It's not because you ordered the forbidden taco, but because she's actually a witch. Anyway, that's how I would imagine the general belief those people had in the medieval ages. But can you really blame those people for being socially programmed that way? It is quite the testament how far humanity's morals have changed. Number 9. You have broken virtually any rule in the Bible. For many people around the world, the Bible is often regarded as one holy book that, to many prospects, was to be given much respect. During the Middle Ages, it was very illegal to break any rule in the Bible because you could just end up being named a witch. Just to give you a good example from back then, the Puritans strictly observed the Sabbath day, which meant no kindling of fire, no trading, and no working. It was illegal to commit adultery, lead people to other gods by prophecy or dreams, lie, be gluttonous, idle, or just miss church. The whole 9 yards. It was also illegal to have long hair, and failure to obey the rules, you would most likely be convicted and sentenced to death for being a witch. Number 10. Owning a telescope. During the Middle Ages, owning a telescope could have very well put you on a t-shirt. The thing is, these telescopes were often misconstrued as evidence of witchcraft due to a lack of understanding about scientific instruments and celestial observations. Which is not surprising by human standards if you don't understand it. It's either an alien, a witch, god, or math with letters. Anyways, the telescope, an emerging technology during that time, enabled individuals to explore the night sky and observe celestial bodies. The act of peering through a telescope might have been viewed with suspicion, as the stars and planets were often associated with mystical or divine forces. So if anyone was seen observing the sky with a telescope, rumors could easily spread, and before you know it, you're on public display in the middle of a witch trial. Number 10. You have had an argument with one or more of your women friends. While arguing with a woman is considered uncalled in today's world, the medieval ages was just more exaggerated. Greatly inspired by infamous witch finders like Matthew Hopkins and John Sharn, this belief didn't take too long for women to accuse other women of witchcraft as a way of deflecting their indictments. As author Elizabeth noted, and I will read, "Women were more likely than men to be convinced of this complicity with the devil, and given such convictions about themselves, they could more easily imagine that other women were equally damned." Like the case of Rachel Clinton, a woman of worth and quality. Just to be clear on this, such women were usually regarded as of higher ranks in the society. She got herself into big problems that her rung in the class system of women of worth and quality incredibly lower. I won't mention what she had done to deserve such a devaluation, but I remember her mentally disturbed mother accusing her of going so down the rungs of the class system of women of worth and quality. So, what was her mistake that she finally named a witch? You see, Rachel happened to have hunched other women of worth and quality with her elbow as she walked by them at church. This later catapulted into some sort of chaos, and those women started pointing fingers to Rachel, calling her a witch. Rachel was later convicted of witchcraft and left to meet her sad fate. Number 11. You have one or more women friends. It was a big sin to see women gathered together in a group without having a male to accompany them. It was believed that by women gathering only themselves, it was like they were having a coven meeting to worship the devil. I would pay big money to have a guy from the Middle Ages transported to 2024. Look at those groups of women over there running into that building. Straight witches! Where's their male chaperone? Yeah, they're going to the bathroom, buddy, and you haven't seen nothing yet. Wait until you meet the trannies. The what? Number 12. You're a healer. In past, we didn't have doctors like today, and people entirely depended on healers for healing. This was one risky job for women, and anyone who took it was most likely to face witchcraft accusations. A good example for this was the case for one lady named Margaret Jones, who was executed in 1648 after she warned people that if they didn't do her prescribed treatments, they'd keep being sick, which to my knowledge is actually true, but although her wishes to help, she was punished for it. Damned if you don't, damned if you do. Number 13. A woman married with too few or no children. Do you know that if you had 2 to 3 kids during the medieval ages, you would be considered a witch? Perhaps many of you would have been executed. Many often believe that the devil cursed your unholy womb with infertility and you will never give birth to any child. In another instance, if your neighbors and their children are suffering in any way, they almost certainly believe that you, the jealous crone living next to them, has hexed their home. Number 14. Your neighbors are having trouble conceiving.
Bruh.
Imagine minding your businesses, right? And a young couple moved in last month next to your house, but because they're having their troubles, your life ends up coming to its expiration date. The people back in the medieval ages would accuse you of stealing the would-be babies from them because you're a witch. And a sad reality here is that it was quite uncomfortable for some people because most of them would end up taking away their own lives because of the pressures they'd be receiving from their neighboring people. Number 15. Being a woman. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and remember, knowledge is power.
Knowledge.